Hello students, and welcome to the session of Team-Based Learning Strategy. In today's session, I will introduce you to the concept of team and teamwork, and then we will have a chance to look at real-life examples of how a team-based learning setting looked like. Later on, in order to be proactive enough in the team-based learning strategy, I would highly recommend my students to understand and continuously practice the active listening skills. And lastly, teamwork would not be effective from experience if we don't know how to provide reasonable arguments and also how to give and receive constructive feedbacks. Teamwork should not be any distance to your knowledge, since you probably worked with your team lots of several times at your high school. So according to the Business Dictionary, a team is a group of people with a full set of complementary skills required to complete a task, job, or project. If you are in a team, you and each team member are required to hold the four following criteria. Number 1, you are able to operate with a high degree of interdependence. 2, you share the authority and responsibility for self-management. 3, you are accountable for the collective performance. And 4, you work towards a common goal and share rewards. Teamwork can be challenging but rewarding. It is said that the team becomes more than just a collection of people when a strong sense of mutual commitment creates synergy and thus generates performance. Now, I want to get back right into our class. Can you imagine what would be the setting of a team-based learning environment? Here are some of the examples for you. As you can see, students are divided into small groups, and they sit with their groups for the whole sessions. Teamwork should be one of the things that you remember the most out of your university life, and I hope, of course, positively. So, how to work best in a team? I would recommend you 3 things. Number 1, to be able to listen actively. 2, you must know how to articulate your ideas. And lastly, know how to provide constructive feedback as well as handling feedback from others. Listening is the process of receiving constructive meaning from and responding to spoken or nonverbal messages. To hear something with thoughtful manner, be careful to distinguish between listening and hearing. Hearing is a physical process, and that it happens naturally in a passive manner. Listening, on the other hand, is a physical and mental process that it happens actively, and it is a learning process, a skill that you need to be trained. So, listening is hard. You must choose to participate in the process of listening. During the process of listening, you should be aware of noises which can disrupt the communication process anytime. Noises in communication can be caused by hunger medications, noises made by orders, overly bright lines, or even human slaps can be considered a noise in communication. So, the next question is how to actively listen. Here are 8 tips for you to actively listen. Step 1. Face the speaker and maintain eye contact. So, talking to someone while they scan the room or study a computer screen or gaze out the window is like trying to hit moving targets. So, eye contact is considered a basic ingredient of effective communication. When we talk, we look at each other in our eyes, and that doesn't mean you cannot carry on a conversation from a classroom or from another group. But if the conversation continues for any length of time, you will get out of the mood. The desire for better communication pulls you together. Do your conversational partners the courtesy of trying to face them to put aside all papers, books, info, and other distractions. Look at them, even if they don't look at you. Shyness, uncertainty, shame, feelings, and other emotions, along with cultural taboos, can inhibit eye contact in some people under some circumstances. So excuse the other guys and stay focused on yourself. 2. Be attentive but relaxed. Now, if you make your eye contact and you don't have to stare at the other person, you can look away now, then carry on like a normal person. The important thing is to be attentive. Mentally screen out instructions like background, activity, and noise. In addition, try not to focus on the speaker's accent or speech to the point where they become distractions. Finally, don't be distracted by your thoughts and feelings and bias. 3. To acknowledge the message and try to feel what the speaker is feeling. Listen without judging the other person or mentally criticizing the things she tells you. Then you can listen without jumping to conclusion. Remember that the speaker is using language to represent the thoughts and feelings inside her brain. You don't know what those thoughts and feelings are, and the only way you will find out is by listening. Don't be a sentence grabber. So, how to feel what the speaker is feeling. If you feel sad when your person with whom you are talking to expressing sadness, joyful when she expresses joy, fearful when she describes her fear, then you are an effective listener. So, be empathetic. To experience empathy, you have to put yourself in the other person's place and allow yourself to feel what it's like to be her at the moment. This is not an easy thing to do, so it takes energy and concentration, but it is a generous and helpful thing to do, and it facilitates communication like nothing else does. 4. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. Allow your mind to create a mental model of information being communicated. Whether a literal picture or an arrangement of abstract concepts, your brain will do the necessary work if you stay focused, fully alert. So, when listening for long stretches, concentrate on and remember keywords and phrases. When it's your turn to listen, don't spend the time planning what to say next. You can rehearse and listen at the same time. So, think only about what the other person is saying. Finally, concentrate on what is being said, even if it is not for you. If your thoughts start to wander, immediately force yourself to refocus. 5. Don't interrupt and don't impose your solutions. Children used to be taught that it's rude to interrupt, so certainly the opposite of being modeled on the majority of talk shows in reality programs, where loud, aggressive, and in-your-face behavior is condemned, if not encouraged. Interrupting sends a variety of messages. It can say that I'm important and I'm more important than you are. I don't really care what you think, and I don't have time for your opinions. That's really bad. We all think and speak at different rates. So, if you are a quick thinker and an agile talker, the burden is on you to relax your pace for the slower and more thoughtful communicator, or for the guy who has trouble respecting himself. So, when listening to someone talking about their problems, refrain from just suggesting solutions. Most of us don't want your advice anyway. So, if we do, we'll ask for it, of course. Most of us prefer to figure out our own solutions. So, we need you to listen and help us do that somewhere way down the line. If you're absolutely bursting with the brilliant solutions, at least get the speaker's permission. You can ask like, would you like to hear my ideas? 6. Ask questions only to ensure understanding. Questions only to clarify. When you don't understand something, of course you should ask the speaker to explain it to you, but rather than interrupting, you need to wait until the speaker passes and then say something like, back up a second, I didn't understand what you just said about. 7. Give the sweet girl regular feedback. It means summarize, reflect feelings, or simply say, You know what? Show that you understand where the speaker is coming from by reflecting speaker's feelings. If the speaker's feeling is hidden or unclear, and occasionally paraphrase the content of the message, or just nod and show your understanding to appropriate facial express. And sometimes that's enough. The idea is to give the speaker some proof that you're listening to them and that you're following her train of thought, not of indulging in your own fantasies while she talks to the other. 8. Pay attention to what is said, to nonverbal cues. If you exclude email, the majority of direct communication is probably nonverbal. So, face-to-face with a person, you can detect enthusiasm, boredom, or irritation very quickly. In the expression around the eyes, the set of the mouth, the slope of the shoulders, and these are clues you cannot ignore. When listening, remember that words convey only a fraction of the message. Okay, so let's talk about how to provide reasonable arguments. I will introduce you 5 components of message. Number 1, that briefly indicate the reason of your conversation by saying like, I'd like a minute to discuss about, or I'd like to reflect on, or I see what I need to explain that will help you, to indicate why you want to start the conversation. Second, to tell them what you are hearing, what you are seeing, what you haven't seen or haven't heard. So as far as I know, I'm concerned, I was under the impression that it was not until recently that I heard something. 3. What are your feelings and what you feel about the issue? It confuses or distracts me. It's my pleasure to know that. I can't help but feel sad about. 4. What opinion you need or you want to explain. Like you agree with something, disagree, you want to explain more, or you want to clarify something. 5. What the positive result will be from receiving or acting on your request. You can say nothing like, I'm totally confident that. I have absolutely no doubt that. There are so reasons to believe that. Constructive feedback is providing useful comments and suggestions that contribute to a positive outcome, a better process for improved behaviors. It provides encouragement, support, corrective measures, and direction to the person receiving it. So, knowing how to keep constructive feedback is the valuable skill. Constructive feedback can be positive. It means that letting someone know they are doing well. Negative, letting people know about ways in which things could be improved. Or neutral, just an objective observation. So, feedback is often confused with criticism, but feedback should not be viewed as a personal assault or a list of errors, mistakes, or defects. While the content of the feedback can be negative, its delivery can always be constructive. So, there are 2 main elements that make feedback constructive: the content and how the feedback is delivered. So there are 4 tips for you to give feedback. Constructive feedback must be specific and issue-focused rather than a value judgment about the individual. Constructive feedback should be based on what is observable rather than assuming anything about the person's attitude or motivation. It also includes some specific directions on how to make improvements when needed. Feedback needs to be constructive, and it should not be delivered in a way that provokes hurt feelings, shame, defensiveness, resistance, or a sense of failure. So, honest doesn't mean tactless. Here are some examples of positive and negative constructive feedback. Now, let's move to the last part of our today's video of how to receive criticized feedback. At the first signs of criticism, you should not do anything at all. Try not to react. Instead, you should have a few seconds to quickly remind yourself of the benefit of receiving constructive criticism. It's to improve our skills, our work, products, and relationships. It can also help you meet the expectation that your professors and others have of you. Second, now you're ready to engage in a productive dialogue as you are a competent, thoughtful self. As the person shares feedback with you, listen closely. Allow the person to share their complete thoughts and without interruptions. When they're done, repeat back what you heard. For example, so I hear you saying that you want me to provide more detailed quickly report. Is that right? Next, I know it's hard part, but look at the person in the eyes and thank them for sharing the feedback with you. So let's talk over this. Be deliberate and say, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about this with me. Next, this is also a very hard part. It's time for you to process the feedback. You probably want to get more clarity at this point of time and share your perspective. So, avoid engaging in debate. Instead, ask questions to get the root of the actual issues being raised and possible solutions for addressing them. Once you articulate what you will do, go forward and thank the person again for the feedback. You can close the conversation and move on. You may want to ask for a follow-up meeting to ask for more questions and get agreement on the next steps. And that's okay. It will give you time to process the feedback, to seek advice from others, and to think about solutions. To sum up, constructive criticism is often the only way we learn about our weaknesses. Without it, we cannot improve. One more defensive instead of accepting and crashes will run the risk of missing out on this important insight. So remember, feedback is not easy to give, and it's certainly not easy to receive too. But it will help us now and in the long run.